everybody. So if you can
hear us and see us,
yes, exactly. Just say hi. So hi,
hello.
Sequoia. Hi, Yasmin. Hi, Marilia. Hi, Valeria. Lots of people saying hi. Right. So let's get started. So before anything, let's introduce ourselves. Right. So my name is Sergio Monteiro. Right, and I am currently a franchisee for CNA. Right. I own a school here in São Paulo, Guarulhos. Right. So we are in the city center. If there is anyone from Guarulhos among you, can you please let me know in the chat? Right. So and thank you. And I'm also I'm also self tutor for CNA. Right. And this is it. Right. So Barbara, don't you want to introduce yourself as well?
Well, as you know, my name is Barbara Lemos. I am actually I do many things in the ELT.
Yes, you
But
do.
currently, I'm responsible for the examiners at our center, BR500, CNA, yes. And I organize the CELTA courses. So I work along with Sérgio on that matter as well. Okay.
Great.
So you're telling us where you're from. So we have people
Yes.
from São Paulo and the Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo countryside. I saw someone from Florianópolis. Welcome, everybody. Yes, I am a multitask person.
All right.
Hi, Roger.
So don't you want to tell us where you're based, where you're speaking from, so that we can have sort of a notion where you are? So as Barbara said, we know that some of you are in São Paulo, Piracicaba, São José dos Campos. I saw Rio as well. What about the rest of you? Where are you speaking from? Just let us know in the chat. Well, by the way, while you tell us where you're from, Porto Alegre, great.
Oh.
Mogi Guaçu, that's awesome. Right, okay.
Minas Gerais, love it.
Yes. It's a shame we cannot see you and hear you, right? We are teachers, right? So we sort of miss that, right? So I wish I could see and hear you, but we're gonna try to make this as interactive as possible. So we are going to interact with you via chat, if that's okay with you, right? That's sort of a rhetoric question, right? Because you don't have much of a choice, right? But as I said, we're going to try to make this as interactive as possible so that we have a forum to exchange opinions, experiences, and ideas. If that's okay, just tell me okay in the chat, right? Okay, good. Thank you, episode. Thank you, everyone. Great, great. Okay.
So,
okay.
Let's get started then.
Yes, shall we?
Okay. So you're not able to scream alive.
I wish you were.
Maybe you can write it. But anyway, so I would like to start by telling you something that I've experienced some time ago when I was visiting was a kind of museum, an aviation museum, if I can say that. And when I was talking to one of the people responsible to show place around, this person mentioned something really interesting. At least it was for me. And she mentioned that in the beginning of the commercial aviation, all flight attendants had a very specific requirement for them to be accepted in the job. They all had to be nurses. Yeah. And then we started laughing because we thought, oh my goodness, so I guess that it was pretty dangerous to travel by plane those days. And they needed to have people well prepared in case of an emergency. Yeah, of course that, yeah, nowadays they don't they take courses, of course, to first aid things and stuff. But I hope, yeah. But why am I saying that? When I started teaching, nobody asked me for any specific training or certification, or just the fact that I had finished my course at the language school I used to go to. They thought I was okay to become a teacher and start teaching. Yeah. But luckily, I think today things have changed. Yes, people are more concerned about our professional development, not only teachers, ourselves as teachers, but I think language schools. Yeah. So basically, I think plain of that, yes. That's why we are here. Try to give you some hints, maybe. Maybe you will know some of them, but it's always good to, share experiences.
Yeah, if you allow me, Bob, because you just said, well, luckily things have changed, right? Yes and no, right? I think they've changed in many institutions. I know from, yeah, I know of many institutions that provide very good programs of teacher education, but I've also know of many institutions that do not, right? I've just hired and just hired a couple of teachers, and during their pre-service, they were telling me that they have been teaching for a while, right? And one of them told me that, right, that she had been teaching for a while, and the exact same situation that happened to you had happened to her, right? I mean, like she was hired, she was given the books and said, go and teach. So, which I think it's a shame, right? I mean, it's not only a shame, but it's also the problem if we think in terms of the class of teachers as a whole, right? Because it's sort of, there's a trend that says that there are two occupations that everybody thinks they are entitled to be, right? I mean, teachers and coaches, right? The coach for the Brazilian selection, right? So it is, I think whenever an unprepared teacher or someone who's not really prepared to go and teach a class is given the job of a teacher. So this somehow puts our class in a very delicate position, right? Because in a way, what we are saying, what these institutions are doing is saying, well, anyone can go and teach, right? Which we know it's not a fact. It's not really true. So do you guys agree with me? I mean, because I mean, especially when it comes to language teaching, it seems to me that though things have changed considerably, people still think, well, you speak English, right? So why don't you go and teach? And we know that this is not true, right? Knowing the language does not mean that I'm able to teach it, right? Do you guys, I mean, those of you who are here with us, do you agree with that? If you agree, just tell us, just share with us. Okay, great. And this is one of the reasons why we are here to talk to you today, right? Because we do believe that one way to strengthen the class of teachers is through teacher development, right? Teacher education, right? If we do not see ourselves as professionals in the sense of going through a program of education, being qualified to go and teach our lessons, then we can be in a very, very vulnerable position, right? We are already, because as I said, I mean, it seems to me that this still happens, that anybody can go and teach. Unfortunately, we don't have any institution or anybody from the government that somehow regulates language institutes, right? Which puts us in a very difficult and problematic situation, right? Okay, so can we share our slides, and then we can start talking about that, right?
I swear I'm trying to. Okay.
Good. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's okay. Now there we have it, right? So Maria Inês said it would be like having a Portuguese speaker teaching Portuguese. Exactly.
Yeah.
And Maria Inês, I mean, I can tell you for a fact. I mean, I don't have a degree in Portuguese, right? I mean, I have a major in Portuguese, and I try to do that. I try to teach Portuguese too as a foreign language, and man, it was chaos. Right. I mean,
I wouldn't dare actually to do that. But that kind of culture that we have gets us questions like, "Oh, do you work or you just teach?" Yeah, I guess you've been there as well.
We've all been through that, right?
Value, right?
Which again weakens our class, right? Okay, so the title of our presentation actually is Paths to Professional Development. So it was somehow misspelled, but then when we realized that, right, because that had already been advertised, that generated some discussion among us, right, Bob? So do you want to comment on that?
We started wondering, right? Is there just one way for us to get our professional development, or would there be many ways? Yeah, and also, is there like just one linear path we have to follow? Like you have to do one thing and then another thing. You know, one of the questions that I was asked when I took my post-graduation or graduation course was the teacher made us think about what is more important. You should master the language you are teaching. So like you have to be real experts in English language, because that was the goal, right? Or should we know how to teach? So sometimes you don't really master the language, but you maybe master the techniques to do that. Yeah. And then we were thinking about it, and I really honestly don't remember if we got an answer for that. But it's a reflection, right? But someone said it's both. I would agree, yeah, because I think you need to try and improve the most you can in both areas, right? Because you have the means to do that.
Right.
Yeah. But does it have to be a sequence?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a proper way to do that?
I always tend to think, and Barbara knows that, right? I mean, I'm the planning. I'm the planning guy. Barbara knows that, right? I mean, I need a plan to call my own, right? But as all plans, a good plan always has room for change, right? So I do think that there is, as someone pointed out, there's not a single path to follow, right?
It's not like a cake recipe.
Exactly. There are multiple paths you can follow, right? And the good thing about it is that you may change, right? But I think it's key that you have sort of, instead of having a map, perhaps you could have a compass, right? Because the compass sort of tells you where you want to go, right? And what you want to improve, and because perhaps, I mean, you can get lost, but the compass will tell you, okay, this is the right way, so go in this direction, right? And depending on what happens, you may need to change, right? Perhaps in the middle of your road, there might be a river which you cannot cross, right? So you have to go around it, or you have to find another way. But once you have this compass and you know where you're going, you know what you're trying to do, I think I think everything's going to be all right, right? This is one thing that I'd like to comment on. The other thing I'd like to comment on is that we should have flexibility. We should be able to change because we never know what's going to happen, right? We're still coming through this scenario which has changed drastically the way we teach, which is called the pandemic, right? All of a sudden, and I'm sounding very cliche here because you know that better than myself. We had to learn, or we had to adapt our classes to go online, right? So though it was at first emergency teaching, right? For some people, it has become a way of teaching, right? So I know I have a lot of friends who have adopted online teaching as the main way of teaching they do nowadays. So my point here is that we have to be prepared more than ever to the famous VUCA world, this world in which things are changing drastically. But I think the good point, and a very important point, as I mentioned previously, is the compass. Because just like in any field, I think our field is victim to fads, right? So all of a sudden, okay, so this is the answer to all the questions and problems you had. And we know that this is not true, right? So once you know what you're good at, what you're not good at, what your students are good at, what your students are not good at. So once you have this compass that sort of tells you how to maneuver, I think things can get easier. Does that make sense, Beth? Does that make sense, everyone? And those of you who are listening to me. So, okay, great.
Everybody's thinking now.
So this is what we would like to talk to you about now, right? I mean, we, as someone mentioned, we're not bringing any recipes because there are no recipes. If there was a single recipe, we would be writing a book and selling it to you, right? But what we would like to do is to promote some reflection in the next 40 minutes or so that we have, which perhaps can shed some light into your own path, right? Or can help you be this compass that will help you find your way in the process of teacher development, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody said, Henrique, no recipes, but we need to know how to bake the cake. And knowing some ingredients wouldn't hurt as well.
And knowing what kind of cake you want to bake, right?
Yeah, because then you can make a choice. Yeah.
Because that's the beauty of cooking, right? I mean, sometimes with the same ingredients, you can make a lot of different cakes. It all depends on the way you mix all the ingredients. It all depends on the amount of each ingredient you put in the recipe. So, but the point is, what kind of cake do I want to make, right? And most importantly, who am I serving this cake to? Right? So I think those are important questions, right? So before we move on, I think we would like to make a distinction here, and I don't know if this distinction is clear to all of you.
I guess we could ask our colleagues here if they is there a difference, I mean, between teacher development and CPD? What do you think?
Tell us in the chat. Yeah. Or not.
Or not. Tricky question, yes, Derek. Oh, Derek, you're there.
Hey, Derek.
Yes. Anyone? Is there a difference? Would you say yes or no? Yes and no. Okay.
Okay.
I guess she's right?
Yes. If you go into the literature, you're going to find different ways of defining this, right? And we're going to tell you what is the definition that we are adopting here, right? So we would say, yes, there is a distinction, right? But it's a very subtle distinction, okay? So for us, teacher development has to do with what you as a teacher want to do, right? It has to do with your personal aims. Whereas continuous professional development may be something that has to do with the institution you're working for, right? They may coincide. Hopefully, they will coincide, right? But one can extrapolate the other
Ideally, they
one.
will.
Ideally, but one may extrapolate, right? Because perhaps you're teaching private lessons because you want to accomplish, you want to do something that your institution is not really focused on. But the point is, both sort of aim at the same thing, right? Which is making us more qualified, more better prepared.
Professionals.
Yeah, exactly. Better professionals to do what we have to do in our lessons, right? But we just like to make this distinction here because we are focusing a lot more on teacher development here, right? We are considering what you as an individual, regardless of the institution you might be working for, is aiming at in terms of development. Does that make sense? Right? I
On
think
a
it's
more
important to
personal
know.
level, yes.
Exactly.
Maybe it's what you really want to focus on.
Yeah. Again, it may coincide, and it would be good if it coincided with the institution you're working for, right? If you are working for an institution. But I think we thought it would be important to make a distinction so that this was clear to you, right? Good.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I move on?
Yes, please. So when we think in terms of teacher development, right, we may think in terms of different frameworks so that we can organize this journey, right? Remember, I told you that we may have a path and we may have a compass, right? But obviously, if we're going on a journey, we sort of need to map things out and understand, okay, what is it that I'm really good at? And what is it that I need to improve, right? So there are a number of different frameworks available. We've mentioned some of them here. There's the CASA, the ATA SK, the task, there's language goals, strategic goals, philosophical goals, so on and so forth, right? We've chosen one for the sake of structuring this talk. We've chosen one, right? But feel absolutely free to adopt any other,
Yeah, sure.
right? So the one we've chosen, Barbara?
It's called, I don't know if the right pronunciation would be CASA, but
Yeah, K-A,
or CASA.
Right? CASA. Okay. Okay. Just tell me in the chat, how many of you are familiar?
Okay.
Just go back a little bit. How many of you are familiar with the CASA framework? Just tell me in the chat, right? Or how many of you use it? Yeah, okay, Derek, you are. Great. Never heard of it. Okay. Good.
Good.
So we are glad we are bringing something new to you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Right.
All right.
So those of you that are already familiar with it, bear with us, right?
Yeah. Maybe help us.
Yes.
Your ideas. Or if you have used it, maybe you can share your experiences using.
Right. Okay, good. Again, the CASA is just a way for you to organize the different areas of your expertise, right? And mainly areas that you want to work on. And I think this is something very interesting. And I really like the CASA because it seems to me to be an evolution of what we call in Portuguese chá, yeah, which is for knowledge, attitude, knowledge, skills, and attitude, right? This is very common in the human resources world, right? When we talk about training development, this is very, very common, right? However, CASA brings in a new element, which I think is a very, very important element, which is awareness, right? And we're going to go through all the different elements that make up this acronym, right? And before we go through them, I think it's important to mention the fact, because I remember a couple of years ago, I used to be part of the LAMSIG, right? Which is a SIG for BRAZ-TESOL. The SIG stands for Special Interest Group, and the LAM stands for Language and Management SIG. So we are a group of people. I was part of a group of people that were interested in researching and discussing leadership and management in the field of language teaching. And I remember that when we had an event to launch our SIG, we talked, one of the topics that we talked about was teacher development. And to my surprise, the only thing that was mentioned when it came to teacher development was language development. I was actually overwhelmed, right? Because obviously language development, it is a crucial element in our field, right? But I don't think it's enough, right? And this is what we would like to cover here. I mean, I think we have to think of other elements that are important to make us better professionals, right? And Hiki wrote something here.
Mm-hmm. She says that no one offers a Valita course, is that it? For making up a good professional. I always have the impression that it's the case for teaching English. Some training, some slides, some meetings, and voila, go to the room. Yeah. I guess you're lucky if you get some slides and some meetings. In my case, I'm serious. They gave me the book, and here's the book, there's the classroom, go. Yeah. And all I had was my perceptions and my knowledge as a student. Yeah, so I tried to imitate the teacher that I had when I was studying English. Yeah, but nothing formal, you know.
Yeah,
and
if we come to think that different from as Ehike said, a Valita course, because the Valita is always the same, right? The blender is always the same. However, you may have a different model every now and then. However, it's always the same, right? I mean, like, okay, so you push this button, so it's going to mix things and so on and so forth. However, our job has an element of complexity that makes every single class unique, right? So this dichotomy between theory and practice becomes bigger because every class you have to make a zillion decisions, and sometimes the theory is not enough to account for, to explain what has to be done in the classroom. Mind you that I'm not saying that the theory is not important, right? But we have to develop skills and strategies to bridge and to translate these theories into our practice, right? Especially because those that came up with the theories, they were in a different context, right? So I always say that a theory is a good starting point, but it does not, and it should not explain reality, right? Theories are important points to help you make informed decisions. Does that make sense to you, right? Because otherwise what may happen is that what may happen is that you're just copying
Mm-hmm.
and you are not aware of why you're doing that.
That's the point.
I'm copying because that has been done to me before,
Mm-hmm.
and I cannot explain why I do that. So ideally, what we should be able to do is explain. Look, I'm doing this because I believe this is how people learn languages, or this is how people learn, right? So I affiliate myself to this learning theory, right? And
Mm-hmm.
mind you, there's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong, because I believe most of you, if not all of you, have been through different methodologies to learn languages, and yet you all learned how to speak English, right? I
Mm-hmm.
always, I have a very good dear friend who says that people learn English despite their teachers and the methods that they use, right?
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, if you know what you're doing, right? If your decisions are informed, things are much
Mm-hmm.
better, right? Um, okay, so I'm talking like crazy here about this.
Mind your TTT, Sergio.
Sorry. That has to do with the first letter of our acronym, right? Which is knowledge.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, but first I want to say hi to there's a person from El Salvador.
Oh, that's great.
Wow. Welcome. Okay. Well, as you could see, yes, in the slide, K is for knowledge, and this is what we were talking about. In our case, of course, it's related to the English language. It's how much we know about the language we are teaching. But not only that, right? Because we have to include the knowledge of our students. Like, do we know the students? Do we know their needs? Do we know their backgrounds, the language level they have? Yeah, so you can really, sorry, it's windy. Make that student improve, and go further and go to the next level. So there are lots of things that is added in this K there, right?
Yeah.
And then we put there some examples for you of how you maybe can measure this knowledge, yes, and maybe make you help you become more aware. Because sometimes, as Sergio said, sometimes we are not really aware of the things we have to improve. Yeah, sometimes we think what we know is enough. We've studied, or maybe I have the certificate. Okay, I don't need anything anymore. But as somebody said here, it's a never-ending process. Yeah. So we do have, of course, some certificates in language proficiency, like FC, which now is B2 first, C1 advanced, etc. Okay. And of course, about our students, it's really nice if we can at least be aware of the CEFR, so we can really tell that student level and make a difference, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anna mentioned that sometimes it's really hard to know all of them due to the number of students we have in the classroom. That's true, Anna.
It
But
is.
I think,
Yes.
but I
Nobody
think we
said it's
can,
going to be easy.
yeah. But I think that there's a very important point here that is related to knowledge, which is obviously there is knowledge of each and every student, and that is great. The more we know about our students, the better it is.
We're
But
public
also there is also knowledge about groups of students, right? So, for example, let me give you a couple examples. If we're teaching a certain age group, so we might know, okay, um, this is how children at this age behave. So the more you know about it, right, the easier it becomes, because then you understand that it's not personal, right? Oh, okay. You're teaching teenagers, so okay, that's the way they behave, because cognitive psychology will explain that they're going through So in such period, right? Or you're teaching monolingual students, you're teaching Brazilian students, right? Which I think is the case for most of us here, right? So I know that Brazilian students, they have a tendency to have problems with certain sounds or problems with certain structures because they are not part of our native language. So knowing about that helps you become a better teacher, right? So this knowledge is a little different from knowing my student in particular, this particular Barbara, okay? I know that Barbara has problems in her place with her parents, so on and so forth. This is one kind of knowledge, which is obviously important for your lesson, but something else is, okay, this group of students in particular. So once I know that, again, I can make informed decisions about what I'm going to do in my classroom. Does that make sense to you? Right? If it does, just tell me so in the chat, right? So what we're talking about here is not only knowing the language and knowing how to use the language, but all the other correlated fields that might add to our lesson. So knowing about cognitive psychology, knowing about the kind of linguistic problems that your students, again, as I said, if it's a monolingual group of students, what kind of problems they might have, knowing about teaching techniques and what techniques might be more applicable to certain levels of students and certain ages, right? And the list goes on and on. So it's really mapping out and knowing this kind of things and being aware, okay, what is it that I'm good at and what are the different tools or the different resources I have available that might help me know more about that, right? But is that enough, Barbara?
Well, we have the letter A, which is in this case for attitude. There's another A. But well, attitude is all about having a notion of our own professional needs, maybe. Our students, their learning process, okay? So it's about our behavior, our perceptions, our feelings about how we see ourselves as teachers, okay?
And this, yeah,
some examples there, yes, that Sergio thought about, like joining teachers associations might help, because then you'll be in contact with colleagues that maybe struggle with the same issues, yes, and then you can share, knowledges.
And also think about our roles as teachers, right? What is my role? And because this goes from the very personal point of view, my attitude towards teaching, my attitude towards the way I see myself learning, the way I see what I expect my students, but also it gets bigger and bigger when we think in terms of our class of teachers, right? Who are we as language teachers? So that's why I am a very strong advocate of joining a teaching association, right? Be it BRAZ-TESOL, be it TESOL, TEFL. I've written AP for the APLIs, right? Here in Sao Paulo, we have APLIESP, we know we have APLIEG, all the other, or it might just be a group of teachers, a group of friends that get together and they talk about how to deal with certain things, right? This may be related to language specifically, right? And how the different theories that are being discussed, or different things that are being discussed in the teaching world are happening nowadays. So you might agree with it, or you might be against it. For example, this is. Yeah, I'm not debating this, right? It's just my personal opinion, right? During a long time, people talked a lot about dogmy, right? Okay, let's go dogmy. And I'm particularly against that, right? Again, as I told you before, I need a plan to call my aunt. So this idea of going, okay, let's go into the classroom. I think we have to be flexible, but So this is how I myself stand concerning this. I'm fine if you want to go for it, but uh, uh, it took me some time to think about that and say, well, no, this is not for me. I mean, I think teaching is something deliberate. Obviously, I have to be open, right, to what comes in my classroom, but it requires planning. It requires thinking about my students. It requires thinking about my lesson. What is it that I want to do and what is it that I want to achieve? So I think attitude also has to do with that. And it also has to do with, um, I'm going to go controversial here, right? It also has to do with the political. And again, I'm not here when I'm talking about the political, I'm not talking about Bolsonaro or it kind of thing, but about how you stand concerning certain things, what is okay, what is not okay in your classroom. So it's okay to disagree as long as everybody respects everybody else, right? And it's okay to have a different opinion. So this is also part of your teaching. This is also part of what you bring into your lesson. So there's no such a thing as a apolitical class, right? Which doesn't mean that you have to go preaching, but it just means that you bring a certain core of values into your lesson. And that should be clear to you, right? And as much as possible, that should be clear to your students, right? If we want to develop more critical students. Does that make sense? If it does, just tell me in the chat, please.
Derek mentioned that joining a teachers association has changed his professional life. It was a huge contribution. See?
It is. It is. You meet people, you understand, you see things from a different perspective, right? But anyway, Barbara, let's move on because I'm talking like crazy.
I would say a sense of belonging as well, right? Because I think that it's so important to be with people that
it makes you think out of the box, right? Because I mean, sometimes when you're teaching in a very specific context, and then you can talk to people and you can see different things. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, and we also have the S, for skills. Okay, which is, in other words, is knowing how. Refers to the know-how, yes, of everything that we learn when we are taking a teaching course. Yeah, managing classroom, giving clear instructions. Yes, control the TTT, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and do we proposing these examples? Yes, you have the TKT, which is if you don't want to go straight for CELTA, maybe it could be a start. Yeah, I always remember this when I took my CELTA. I'm not going to say when, but I took it some time ago. And when I took the course, I have to confess I had no idea. I had attended a kind of demo class, and I thought, oh, this is going to be nice for me because I really didn't have a formal education in terms of teaching. Yeah? I major in something completely different, which is publicity. Yeah? And then I started teaching the way I started, and I thought maybe I should get some professional help in this matter. And then I heard about the CELTA, and I enrolled myself in the course. And then I was at the school, ready to take my first class. And then I meet this person, and she's asking me, oh, are you here for the TKT prep? And I was like, TKT prep? What is that? And I was like, no, actually, I'm here for the CELTA course. It's my first day. And she looked at me and said, oh, the demon course?
It's like, it is not like that. It's a very nice course.
I mean, people had this idea and actually the course was, even though I had been teaching for a while, it was what is the term? A watershed experience. Yeah, because you think you know what you're doing, because as Sergio said, you've been imitating your teachers when you were a student, and you were doing things just because you're doing it. Yeah? You're not really aware of what you're doing. So when I took the CELTA and I started learning, I said, oh my goodness, I have been doing this, but I didn't know there was actually a name for that, and people study this, and now why I am doing it. Yeah. So that, sorry for sharing my experience like that, but
No, it's definitely. I tend to think it's definitely a game changer, right? I mean, it's because as we mentioned before, the CELTA sort of bridges the gap between theory and practice, right? Because as you mentioned, Barbara, sometimes we're doing things just because, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the CELTA gives you tools. It not only gives you tools, but also gives you an opportunity to put them into practice. And what I think is one of the most valuable things in the CELTA course, which is you have a set of extra pair of eyes. So you lend people's eyes in the sense of people looking at your lesson from different perspectives, and they often shed light into elements of your teaching that you hadn't been aware of otherwise, right? So I remember when I also took myself a course, uh, my tutors they would ask me questions, and they would focus on aspects of my teaching. And so, oh, that's interesting. I had never thought about that before, or I had never realized that I used to do that, right? And more importantly, I had never realized the impact of doing that. So if I do that, what kind of impact does that make on my students? So I think the ask for skills, the know-how, and linking this to what we believe in, because this is something very, very important. Because I've often, um, as an academic coordinator nowadays, having my school, I observe lots of lessons, right? And then you ask teachers, well, what is it that you believe in? And people say, well, I believe in this and that. And then when you show them, uh, look, this is what you did, right? And the key here is to show it without a judgment. It's just describing. This is what you asked, this is what the student answered, and this is how you replied. So if you do that, and if you ask the right questions, it may be a very powerful way of enlightening teachers in the sense of, I had never realized that I'm doing that, and I'm not happy with it. Or quite the contrary, I'm happy with it, and that's okay, right? So this ability to link knowledge with know-how, right, is what we should be aiming at, right? And again, we're not talking only about teaching. We're also talking about language. We're also talking about uh, you being in the classroom, right? I mean, I always give the example of if you want silence, you cannot shout at your students. So thinking about this and how you do these different kind of things helps you become a better professional, right? And finally, that leads into
What we've
awareness.
been talking actually, yes, which is awareness in every aspect. It happens all the way. But yeah, it refers to whether or not we are able to perceive the impact and effectiveness of our actions. Yeah. And how we are thinking about our students, helping them to achieve their goals as well. Yeah. I actually have another example. Sorry, I keep giving my examples, but
That's okay.
I had this farmer student. She contacted me in the beginning, actually the end of last year, because she needed to take the TOEFL test. because she was applying for, I think it was a PhD course in the United States, and she needed the TOEFL in order to get the paperwork. Yeah. And she asked me to help her. And I did for a couple of months. And she took the test. She sat for the test, and she passed with, a better grade than she was expected to. And she called me to say thank you. And you go like, no, come on, it's you. You were a good student. Yes, you were studying all the way. Yes. And, when you don't really want to take any credit for this, but she said, well, I think you don't understand. And because she was my student at CNA a long time ago. Yeah. And she started saying, I think you teachers don't realize the impact you have on our lives. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, this is, it's a lot of responsibility. Yeah, sometimes. And as an examiner as well, we feel that. Yeah? How many times we have like the not that the students' life in our hands, but sometimes they depend on that certificate in order to make a change in their lives. Yeah. So just for us to know this importance that we have and how we impact these people's lives, these students' lives, it makes us think more about our own, at the end, yes, professional development. We owe this, I believe, to our students. Okay.
Yeah. And it seems to me it is kind of paradoxical, the fact that though we work with a lot of people, we always work with a lot of people, right? I mean, obviously you might be only teaching online, you might be teaching one-to-one, right? Or you might be teaching groups, but you're always dealing with people, right? However, the act of teaching is something very lonely, isn't it? I mean, because you plan your lessons, perhaps you might talk to a friend, to a colleague, to a peer about what you're thinking, right? Um, More often than not, we don't have the time because we are running from one class to the other, right? And few are the moments in which we have the time to think about what we did and what was the impact of that and how that could have been changed if I would have changed that if I had to teach this lesson again. So, um, so this awareness of what is it that I do and what is it that I want to change in my lesson? What is it that I'm happy with or that I'm not happy with, and how can I change? Is something that more often than not, comes in second place, right? Because we're always more concerned about planning the next class. So, okay, I have the next class to teach. I have the next course to teach. And I don't think we spend enough time thinking about what we did and how we can do it differently or not, right? So if I'm happy with it, and why am I happy with it, right? If someone asks you like, what you do you teach a good class? Was your last class a good class? Why was it a good class? Right. So these moments are very important, right? Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you? Right. I mean, and also, I was talking to Barbara about that this weekend as we were planning this webinar, um, because as you become more knowledgeable, this also has a price, right? Because sometimes I feel I lose spontaneity. And so perhaps the lessons at the beginning of my career, they were more spontaneous but less professional in the sense of being more technical, being more accurate in terms of what I want to achieve with my students. And nowadays, I tend to think they are a little better, a little bit better in that sense. But sometimes I'm looking for the Sérgio in the lesson. Where's the Sérgio in the lesson, right? So this striking this balance, finding this balance between being a professional in the sense of what is that I want to do, and I also find the right amount of Sérgio the person, Sérgio's view, Sérgio's humor in the lesson. It is a challenge, right? Does that make sense to you? Do you go through that when you're planning and delivering your lessons? Because sometimes I'm like, oops, my teacher talking time is too high because, like I've engaged with my student in this discussion, right? I shouldn't be doing that, right? But at times I feel that is important, and that contributes to building rapport, that builds to creating the right atmosphere in the lesson. Does that make sense? Do you go through this dilemma in your teaching as well? All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maria is mentioning make sense, make difference, make a way, make better. That's the huge important act of teaching. Filtering our teaching is being more conscious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sergio, I think we have like 4 minutes.
Okay. So just wrap it up, right? Okay. So we've brought this a suggestion, right, of a little. Actually, we took this from a site. We can give you the reference later on, right? But we thought it was a very nice framework to organize the CASA framework, right? So you think in terms of strengths, areas for improvement, and action plans, right? And we've brought.
You have an example as here, right?
It's in the next slide, right? So you might have, for example, in terms of strength, you might think, well, okay, my English is good at this point. I'm C1, right? Perhaps I want to get to C2 in the future, but so far so good, right? And I'm really good at teaching children. But I really feel that I need to develop, for example, in terms of teaching remotely, teaching online. I mean, I still don't have what it takes, like to feel comfortable teaching online. And teaching adults, I still feel that I need to find some techniques. So, for example, you might think, well, perhaps a nice way to develop that is taking the CELTA course online, right? And the same goes for all the other things. I'm not going to go through that, right? But this is just to help you organize what you're really good at, right? And what you need to work on, and perhaps get elements from what you're really good at when you're teaching, when you're working on what you want to improve, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. All right. Great.
You also suggest.
Yes, and also the same site, it also suggests the Eisenhower Matrix, right? And what I really like, this matrix is used very often in the corporate world, right? For you to decide what has to be done first. It's very simple. So basically, what you should do once you've done that is get those elements and place them in one of the quadrants, right? So, for example, the first one says important and urgent, opposed to non-important and not urgent. So you place them there, and it sort of gives you a list, sort of an order of priority. Okay, so this is really important and urgent, right? Because I want to get more groups, say. So learning how to teach remotely, learning how to teach adults, it's really key at this point. Now, reflecting on something else, it's not really important. I mean, it would be desirable, but I can leave this for a later moment, right? So my suggestion is, and we can share those slides with you, is think in terms how you want to work on your teacher development, right? And try to organize this and baby steps, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we are very eager to do things, and sometimes we bite more than we can chew, right? So I
That's
always
true.
tell my teachers that we have in there's a technique in coaching, um, which is focusing on that element that will the single element, right? Suppose you have a list of things. Choose the element that will generate the biggest number of changes in all the other elements. So this is the one you should focus on first, right? So think in terms of like, okay, if I change this, if I can make this a little bit better in my practice, this will affect a number of different things, sort of like in a chain reaction effect, right? So this is what you should go first, right? Sometimes this is not what we want to do first because our tendency, our brain is tricky. Our brain always wants to go for what is easier or what generates more pleasure to us, right? So this is the moment when you have to make the tough decisions, right? Okay, so perhaps doing this will be risky, will expose me, but this will generate a number of changes, right? So this is what you should go for, right? Okay, okay. So we already 2 minutes.
That is. I and Sergio found this beautiful saying to end our webinar. Yeah. But I think it summarizes what we wanted to, the message we wanted to send to you. Okay.
And especially being humble in the sense of um, asking other people's opinion and being open. We have to try different things to learn different things, and uh, you know,
yeah.
and you can always learn. And this is the beauty of being alive, being a teacher, being a student, right? Okay. So
Okay, we're all on the same boat. Yes, we should be helping each other, not point fingers as some people do sometimes.
not at all, right?
Okay. So you
And I think
guys, oh, sorry.
that's okay. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say thank you all for joining. Thank you very, very much. And if you want to contact us, here are some emails to do so. And I got a message from my big boss saying that if there is anyone out there interested in taking the CELTA, not many people know that at CNA we are providing this course, but write to me at celta@cna.com.br. Until this Friday, you will get a special discount. Okay.
And
Now
he
it's
keeps
the
asking
bling
if it's
bling
for free.
moment.
And he keeps asking if it's for free. Yeah, he it's
Oh,
for free.
Henrique,
Hugs and kisses.
baby, you can free hugs when we are able to meet again. Yes, it's an online CELTA. Okay, the CELTA we are giving is 100% online. All right. I will be happy to share any information about the course. Just write to me, okay? And as I mentioned, I'm also responsible for the Cambridge examiners at CNA. Maybe if you are interested in becoming an examiner, you can also write to me. I'll explain the requirements for you to do so, okay? And there's Sergio's email, all right? Thank you very much. Thank you, Sergio, for being with
Thank you,
me.
Barbara. And thank you everybody for bearing with us for so long, right? We hope
Yeah.
we have helped you a little bit more in whatever path you decide to follow, right? In language teaching.
Okay, yes. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.